Real quickly, we're going to talk about something along the lines of what camp I saw. As a youth and family minister, I see a lot of things that teens struggle with. Probably the greatest thing that I saw at that camp was the fact that they had that interaction with each other because they didn't have their cell phone. Now, I'm going to say right now, I love technology. I love cell phones. It's great. But I think the problem that we're running into is that we, and not just kids, we become very attached to our cell phones. And probably in an unhealthy way if we're not careful. It reminds me of a couple of things. When it talks about priority, Israel, the children of Israel, made false gods their top priority. And what do I mean by that? The children of Israel were clearly stated to, hey, don't intermingle with these nations, lest that you fall into the same boat as them like a stumbling block. Look over in Exodus real quick. You have this in Exodus where they're getting ready to go into the land, right, and about what the rules are going to be. They're in Exodus chapter 23, 28. And it says, and I will send hornets before you, and you shall drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. But little by little, I will drive them out from before you. He goes on and he says this, from before you until you have increased and you inherit the land. So there was some rules that were going on there. But then you jump down to like verse 32 and 33. It says, you shall make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, unless they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. So there was rules there. Hey, you're going to have this land. That's great. I'm not going to remove all those people from the land. We're going to drive out quite a bit. You know, the conquest is going to happen. But at the end of the day, don't make an agreement with them. We're going to purge them out. We got to get rid of them. We can't be, in fellowship with them because of what they're going to represent and what they're doing. And so there was a warning there that if you make a covenant with their gods, it's going to be a snare to you. Well, after that warning, did that ever follow through? Well, look at Judges. Look at the whole thing of Judges. Judges is a gigantic cycle where they disobey God, and then all of a sudden, after they disobey God, they get into captivity. They go into slavery or captivity, and then they pray to God. God has mercy, sends a judge. They are delivered. There's peace in the land. They forgot about God. They go back to it's just over and over and over. So there in Judges, chapter 2, verse 1, and it says, and the angel of the Lord came up from Gilgal to Bochim, and he said, I led you up from Egypt and brought you to the land which I swore to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this? Therefore, I also said, I will not drive them out before you, but they will be like thorns in your side, and their God shall be a snare to you. So it was, as the angel of the Lord spoke these words, all the people of the children of Israel, and they lifted up their voices and wept. They called that place, the name of that place, Bochim, for that's where they sacrificed there to the Lord. And then verse 6 it says, and when Joshua had dismissed the people, the children of Israel went to each of their own inheritance to possess the land. There was a warning. They did not heed the warning. So sure enough, now we've got the thorn in the side. You've got these nations, and all of a sudden they're intermingling with these nations. Only years later, you see now they're fully all in with these nations. They're now dedicated to these idols that they're worshiping. And Isaiah, I think, puts the nail on the head. There's a lengthy read there in Isaiah chapter 44, 9 through 20. And it talks about just the folly of worshiping a piece of wood, right? That you go out there, that you cut down a tree, you bring it into your house, you decorate it, and I'm like, Christmas trees. No, that's not it, right? I had one person say, well, see, boom, that's why we don't do Christmas trees. Isaiah said so. I'm like, Isaiah was not talking about Christmas trees, y'all. Isaiah was talking about these false idols, talking about worshiping these false idols, that this was nothing more than an inanimate wood. I would encourage you, if we had time, but we don't, I would encourage you, read Isaiah chapter 44, and he talks all about it. He talks about the mindset here, that all of a sudden he's worshiping a tree or a forest or, of something to nourish it whenever he himself cuts it down, that it does nothing. It's nothing. Verse 17, it says, "And the rest he makes into a god, his carved image. He falls down before it and worships it, prays to it, and says, 'Deliver me, for you are my God.' They do not know nor understand, for he has shut their eyes and cannot see, and their hearts, and so that they cannot understand." He goes on and on and on. He goes, these are going to be nothing more than just a materialistic thing. He goes, it provides food for you, but who provided you the food? Right? He goes on, that all of a sudden this fire that you made, the same God that you made here is also the same version of this God that you put into a fire and cook. It's just, and he tells about the folly of this, about worshiping an idol. Definitely read Isaiah 44, 9 through 20 when you get the opportunity, because he really breaks it down of how, with the ludicrous mindset to worshiping this false idol. They dedicated much of their time and energy creating and worshiping their idols. And at the end of the day, we see what happens here. This is the mindset of the unrighteous, that they fall into this idol worshiping, as mentioned there in Romans chapter 1. So my question is, if we're not careful, do we have idols today? What's an idol today that people struggle with? Family. Man, yes. Kind of going back to I am of Cephas, I am of Paul, or Matthew chapter 10. You know, did not think I come to bring peace, but I come to bring a sword, separating a father from a mother. So yes, an idol. Putting family on a pedestal before God. Anything that you put before God is going to become your idol. What else? Entertainment. Man, oh man, yes. Yes. Man, we put some more dedication sometimes in movies than we do in God's Word. What else? I heard slushies? Oh, I was so concerned. I'm like, listen, y'all, Sonic is one thing, but yeah, what was it? Money? Absolutely. Absolutely. For the love of money is the root of evil, right? Not that just money, but the love of it, the greed. What is it? Jobs. Man, oh man, yes. Jobs. A lot of times we put more effort into our work than we do our spiritual work, so very much so. Electronics. We're going to hang a hat on that, because I think that's a big thing, what I've seen with these teens. But not just teens, but also adults. Adults too, very much so. But, you know, that disconnect, I've talked to some of these kids. I said, how did it feel to be disconnected from your phone? Some said it was like horrible. I just couldn't live without it. And some said, you know, I didn't notice it. You know, one said I was grounded anyway, so, you know, I didn't have my phone. So, yeah, yes.
In your lesson.
Yes, sir.
Strong desires.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
LGBT.
That group, LGBT, yeah. Yep. Yep, absolutely. That could be that dedication to that, very much so. You think about the phone for a moment here. This has replaced everything. Do you remember the radios? Like I got to show you a picture of one of the old classic radios, the long ones, the red line that makes that that noise, right? I despise that sound, because that's all I heard growing up. This has replaced that. Now you can choose how you want to wake up, depending on what sound. Guess what mine still is? It's still, because that's the only thing that gets me up, right? It's not I think my daughter has one where it's like, da-na-na-na-na-na-na. That's not going to wake me up, y'all. That ain't going to do it. So this replaced the alarm clock. This has replaced what else? Calendar. Boom, we got it right here. What else has this replaced? Bible. What else did you say? Library, yes, we got a library here. Wallet, what else? Maps, what else? Phone book, what else? Communication, yes. What I heard something? Shopping list. Y'all, you can do pretty much anything you want on this, because we have got the capability. I was having a moment with the kids. I said, we have an amazing device here today, and it is truly amazing. I'm walking away from the microphone, I shouldn't do that. But we have an amazing device today that we can do all these things. You don't have to stand at the wall with a long cord on a phone. My first cell phone was the Nokia brick that you would charge it on a Monday, it would die on Friday. That the only game you had was Snake, and it was horrible. Some of you laughing because you know that. Some of the rest of you are like, we didn't even have phones. We just yelled at each other. Well, I get that, right? But what I'm saying is that this has become such a necessity. And there is a lot of positive things here. But with that, there's a lot of negative things. A lot of negative things. This modern day, I guess you could say, this modern day God in your pocket, you know, will definitely take your time. I love that some things they have here where they show you how much time you're actually on this thing. And sometimes it's sobering when you realize how much you are on your phone. And what could that use be put to? Well, I mean, worshiping God, studying God. And one of the issues that we're running into now, I was talking with the Apologetics Press guys. His name's Jeremy Pate. He does the youth part there at Apologetics Press. He's actually the one that drew the Noah and everything else. We were talking about why is it that kids are not diving into the Bible today? What do you think?
Too much work.
Too much work? Okay.
What you just talked about.
Right there?
You know, as far as the Bible goes, and God's Word, God's Word tells us to study.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're looking up things with that device, that's not studying at all.
Can you study with it, though?
I don't know. You know, there are, I've done quite a bit of research on children's brains and
Mhm.
developing of them. And it's said, of course, you have two different sons, always.
Right.
But it's been said, and I kind of knew for it, that these children's brains are not developing like children's brains used to develop before that.
What we've noticed in what she's talking about, and I can agree to it, definitely to a point, what we're noticing is that we are noticing that kids are very much now coherent on how certain electronics work because of this, which is, those are the positive things. Their reflexes are a lot better, is what we're noticing. However, with that, the attention span. That's why we have such a few things. That's why you got like things like TikTok. It's only 10 seconds. 10 seconds. I want something new. That's why in some videos like Coco, I'm going to get you in a minute. But like Cocomelon, right? Cocomelon is a TV show, a kid TV show, and they change camera angles every 3 seconds. Because they know, 3 to 5 seconds, because they know that a child is not going to stand there and watch something anymore of just a picture of something. It's got to change camera view. So next time you see a kid show, watch how much they change the camera view just to engage with the brain set. So if we are conditioning our children to all of a sudden be, all of a sudden rapidly, I need something entertaining, I need something stimulating, I need this, and we definitely are the people we want it now. When you put the book in front of them, that's words on a page in a lot of kids' minds. What was your comment?
I was just going to say that in my profession as a nurse and triaging a lot of kids, kids are starting to develop carpal tunnel sooner and also neck thing.
I did not know. That's insane. But yeah. Yeah, and I think that is a lot of truth with that because you are conditioned. Because remember, this has replaced all those things, even TV, right? This has replaced TV. You can watch whatever. I mean, Netflix is a great thing. Netflix is also a horrible thing. I think at the end of the day, I don't care for a lot of the content that they have on there. But the other thing is binge watching. And you guess what? It's not just teens. I remember I called my dad, and I'll tell on him. I don't care. I called my dad about a couple months ago. I said, "What'd you do?" And he goes, "Well, we started this show." I said, "Why are you out of breath?" "It's insane." I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "And they just got these annoying things where it says, 'Are you still watching?'" I said, "Dad, that's a hint that if it says, 'Are you still watching?' that means you have a problem." And he watched, he's like, "We binge watched 3 seasons, 24 episodes each in a matter of days." Well, that's a problem. That's a problem. I've done that in past. Not good, not healthy. Like driving from here to Kentucky in one stretch. Not healthy. But if we're not careful, that becomes, think about how much time we've wasted. Can we do entertainment? Absolutely. Yes, you can do it. But if we're not careful, we used to have like a pie chart, and if we had everything working, I would show you, but like a pie chart where it says, this is how much time people spend at dinner, this is how much people spend at recreation, this is how many time TV watching and sleeping. But you know what? This has made its way into every one of those pieces. Because what are we doing at dinner? We sit down with our plate. We do this. I'm going to eat, but I might as well watch something while I eat. All of a sudden, the family dynamic of sitting at the table is gone. Sometimes we want that. We need that. It's like, that's my time where I get to it. I get that too. But what we're noticing, and once again, I'm not against a cell phone. I'm saying there are good things. Technology is great if it's used properly in good amounts. If we have this mindset where it becomes an idol and it becomes more important to us than God and everything else, then there's a problem. If it's creeped our way into everything in life where you can't let go, I mean, let's face it, it's creeped its way into our eating time. It's creeped in our way where our entertainment is now, that is the TV. It's creeped into the point where sleeping. Studies have shown guess what most couples do? They roll over on each side of their bed, they take their phone. I'm just as guilty. Right? Because that's your unwind time, right? Instead of having maybe that conversation with your wife or your spouse, we're engaging in the activities of laughing, right? It's okay, it's healthy to have your own thing, to do your own, but there needs to be that time for communication. And a lot of times a lot of marriages are struggling because they're not taking the time to communicate, because they're taking their own time. Yes, sir?
One of the things also I've noticed with technology is what is your authority?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My nickname for Google is Dr. Google, but a more satirical name is Dr. Giggle.
Yes, yes.
Because you go on there and everybody, every quack under the sun is on there and sound like they're an expert. Our authority for religion
Yes. Absolutely.
is here. But where are they going?
Yeah.
YouTube,
Yeah.
CNN.
That's
The View
Yep.
is the authority for what we believe.
And I think that's the problem, because you go back to Isaiah, you can listen to some of these gods that they worshipped, right? It corrupted the children of Israel morally. It's like you got Milcom. He was the god of the Ammonites, right? He was known for child sacrifice. We also called him Molech, right? So, here is a whole group of people who are now sacrificing their children for the sake of they want their plants watered. You got the god of Asheroth, which was the Canaanite god. Same thing. They thought their worship should be with prostitution. So, I mean, you see how the moral fabric is frayed because of these false gods that are coming in. But we think to ourselves, well, that's not today. Well, like you said, does this become the authority of whatever's on it? A lot of times it does. They had a movie, actually, on Netflix, but it was called The Social Dilemma, how this will tailor to what you are. So if you are a strong conservative, guess what they're going to show you? Strong conservative stuff. If you're a crazy liberal, they're going to go, hey, here's this liberal stuff. If you're like this, they're going to show you those things. They're really intelligent about that. They push that, but they also push an agenda, is what we see. That all of a sudden social media can really control a nation if needed, by just the information that they give out. You have these people saying, well, that's false information, or, that's just, you have the whole information war there, where all of a sudden people are not getting the truth. And I think that's the problem. And you're right. People will go to Google versus the great physician, right? And you can't tell me, Don, that you didn't have anyone that walks into your office and say, well, I know you say I'm diagnosed with this, but WebMD says I'm clearly this. I'm sure you might get that all the time, because, I have people that ask questions all the time, and they're like, well, the internet says, well.
That's why I call it
Dr. Giggle. I think anything you type in on WebMD is just going to end in cancer, is what I've noticed. You can be like, my neck hurts. Well, you have this.
But you have to critically think.
Mm-hmm, that's the thing.
Stop and think. Okay, it says this. Well, how do you know that's true?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How do you know it's true? What is the basis of that? There's no critical thinking.
And I think that's why, in that AP camp, that's what they really hit hard on, was saying, let's actually think about this. Let's look at the evidence. That's why we watched that video series, Patterns of Evidence, to see, okay, is this true or not? You have to use logic with it. And I think it's in the mid-60s, they had a phrase that I think is really good that we can apply it to here, is that the phrase was garbage in, garbage out, right? If you feel you have a garbage, guess what's going to come out? And so we have a lot of people today, adult, young people, doesn't matter. They fill their brains, they're like, well, my favorite thing is, well, it doesn't bother me. Well, then you've forgotten how to blush, right? And Jeremiah says that's not a good thing. I have one teen, he's like, I can look at a naked woman and it doesn't do anything. I'm like, okay, well, there's a problem. Because that's a whole nother conversation. But at the same time, there's an issue there. Right? You've forgotten how to blush. You're not embarrassed. You don't have that anymore. And we sadly have a whole bunch of people today that are desensitized to sin, that they're allowing sin because we have flirted with sin, because we have allowed a lot of times, sadly, what happens on that phone eaten into our life. We're going to talk about a subject real quick that a lot of people don't want to talk about. It's pornography. pornography is a huge industry. Huge industry. You've got on average, it was over 24,000 viewers per second that are on a pornographic website. So you can't tell me this is not an issue, right? Studies are showing right now that 1 out of every 3 individuals has an addiction to it. I can't tell you how much that is. It's in the Lord's church. And yet the problem is a lot of times we just don't talk about it. Like, we don't talk about it. That doesn't happen. We need to talk about it because it's more accessible now than ever. Right? Where back you had to go find a magazine and hide it. No, it's here. You can accidentally type in the wrong thing and it's going to give it to you. That's the struggle we got. And a lot of times we put this in the hands of kids and everything else. There's a lot of apps out there. I can tell you right now, I don't care for being in law enforcement. I know that some kids just use it for texting and everything else, but I can tell you, I'm just going to be honest. You know, when Snapchat first started, I said, let's think about the concept here. We're going to take a picture, it's going to send the picture to someone else, and it's going to magically disappear after they view it. I'm going to tell you right now, young people, that does not happen. It doesn't. In law enforcement, I would have people come to me and they said, so-and-so sent this picture to me. I don't have proof. I would plug it into my computer and go, bing, and there it is. Nothing is gone. It's always going to be there. So we got to be careful and teach our kids responsibility with that. We need to make sure that they have an understanding. That's why sometimes some kids are like, it's just, I don't get it. My parents are so strict, because the internet's out there and the devil is using it to a T. So at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we got to be careful. And you're right. The pocket God, I guess you can call it, can definitely corrupt us today, because we think to ourselves, well, we're not killing kids. Well, what about abortion? What about sparing the guilty with no capital punishment? What about rewarding the wicked, like sometimes our movie stars and entertainers, and depriving the actual good, like, I don't know, teachers, right? What about, when you look at society today, divorce is made easy, adultery is looked upon lightly, fornication is just an affair, homosexuality is just an alternative lifestyle. What about the effect of families and communities where you do have pornography spread out because of the name of freedom, that you can do such, that even children are deprived by the God-given discipline that God has said is okay, but yet we can't give spankings apparently anymore, right? We look at what society becomes when we allow, the majority to determine what we think. And it's very much what we see there in the time that we see that everyone does what is right in their own eyes. And so we got to be careful. We got to be careful. Once again, I'm not saying that we should ban all cell phones. What I'm saying is there is a lot of good, but there's also a lot of bad that can come about with that. So with that being said, I would say take a detox every now and then. Maybe delete that app that you're spending, 15 hours on, right? If you're not careful. I'm just as guilty, okay? I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just as guilty. My buddy would send me a TikTok. I'm like, hey, that's pretty funny. That's really funny. And then all of a sudden I would watch another one, and I'm like, you know what? I'll download the app, and then all of a sudden 5 hours later, I've just, it's great. That cat, I'm going to send that to someone. And it just draws you in. So if you're not careful, we all of a sudden make this more important than God. Y'all, it's even creeped inside the church where even worship service, we can't even get away from this, right? That's why sometimes it's such a struggle that, I got a Bible app, that's great, but you're one swipe away from Angry Birds or something. I don't know. I mean, it's like right there. Or a notification pops down and distracts you. So, these are things to consider and everything else. And so we got a lot of young people and even adults that they need entertained. And the problem that Jeremy and I were talking about, how do we get them back to the Bible? Do we do an app? Well, no, because this, and this, and this. What do we do? Go ahead. Right, no, and that's very true. You end up having a ton of versions out there that are not accurate, or they give you the extra commentary that's definitely not accurate. And so the things to consider, absolutely. So one last question. And I don't know. I don't know the answer. I asked the young people. I don't know. How do we get our young people into the Bible? What do we do? If we have a generation that is desensitized, we have a generation that needs stimulation, It's not like the church in the 50s. We now have a very drastic difference. I'm not saying you change truth. You can't change the truth. But how do we get them into God's Word? Back there.
We don't need to teach our kids that they need to be entertained all the time.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I think that's a skill. We do. And do we do that as parents? How easy is it to... Exactly. How easy is it? Like, well, I'm not... I had one guy before he was a parent. And he's like, well, I'm never going to give my kid, a phone or a tablet, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. Because if we're not careful, what happens? Kid's screaming at the top of his lungs. You're like, here's Bluey. And Bluey becomes the parent. Right? Right? Let him scream, yeah.
We are to become the walking Bibles.
Yes.
She was talking about the fact that we're to study to show ourselves working the fruit and help truth. That passage of Scripture is directed not to the pagan, not to the non-Christian, but to the Christian.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if we don't know the book, where we can basically engage them without opening up the book, we're in trouble.
I agree.
You've got to, the apostles, when they reached out, if you look in the book of Acts, all but one example shows that evangelism was done orally, in interactive form. They didn't have 66 scrolls in the wagon.
Right.
This is an invention of the Renaissance.
Right.
They basically spoke it, and we have to interact with the kids. We have to ask leading questions, shut up, and let them talk.
Yeah. Yep.
Silence is deafening.
Yep.
I think also we need to start young. I teach 4 or 5-year-olds right now, and every Wednesday night we go through the books of the Old Testament and the books of the New Testament. I'm making sure they have those down for you, so that they will at least know which is Old Testament, which is New Testament, something that you said earlier. And I think we need to start teaching these things, teaching these basic things. I love that one of my kids brings the Bible. I don't know how well he can read it. He reads it.
Right.
And that's a good thing.
It's a start. And I think it's touching on what you just said. It reminds me of there in 2 Timothy where Paul says to Timothy, he goes, when I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your what? Grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. Well, how did he learn the scripture to lead us up? It was from parents. So you're right. We have to teach our kids to do that. And that is where it should start. The problem we're running into is now we've got kids that are in the world that we're trying to reach out that have no foundation. They don't have the parents. And then you got to figure out, okay, how do we get them into these? And I think critical thinking questions is the way to do it. And I agree with that because a lot of times I've had these teens where, they say some of the best Bible classes we have is not just me going through, because we will go through some verses, but are the questions afterwards. Like, well, how does that work? Well, why? And my favorite question is, why? Why do you believe what you believe? Because mom and dad said so. Okay, well, is that why? Then there's a problem there. Let's look at it. I think that's what it boils down to. If we had more time, we would dive into it. My thing is this. If we have to set some time aside for God, this, and like others, this can be our distraction. We can use this for good, or we can use this for evil at the end of the day. But whenever it becomes more important to us than God, whenever it becomes an addiction, then we got a problem. That all of a sudden we turn to this for authority. We turn over to this for our answers. You might be able to find some answers because you have to look and dig. But like I said, I could type in Google right now, how do I go to heaven? You're going to find 5 pages of nonsense and maybe one that has the answer. Right? In a world of so much information, it's hard to determine the truth. And that's why it's easy to believe a lie told 1,000 times over than hear the truth just once.